Hello folks, you are once again welcome back. What you are going to focus in this video is really important. You are going to work on the profile page of our application. But before that, I would like to point out some important things here. Because this series is not about CSS and then HTML styling, I have provided a couple of components that I would like you to know. So first, I provided a home page component. So when you head over to my GitHub repository, and I'll provide a link below. When you go to the bookkeeping app YouTube playlist, you click on commit, and as you can see, I've added two HTML templates, the home page and then the profile. So when you click on the home page, sorry, don't click on that, but instead click on this code icon here for home page template. Click on that and go to front end and SRC, and I have added one folder called assets, so you can download this folder, and in there I have one file called books.mp4. This is a video, as we see. Let me go to the final one, the one we see on the home page. This is a video file, and in there I have a couple of images about book. I name it book image and then book pick image, right? And for the actual component, when you go to the component, go to home, and in there I have CSS for the home. You can copy that, and the home page, okay, component, you can also copy that. Then the other component is a profile page. So when you go to commit number 12, here is also the same process. Click on the code icon and it will take you to the front end folder and SRC, and in the component here I have profile component, and I have both CSS and a component itself. So you can grab that and head over to your project front end, and then inside the SRC we can paste the asset folder here. As you can see, this is the image. The image I use for the front end, and then the profile page I use this pic. So you can change this pic based on your need. And the video file here cannot be played here in this editor. And the component, when you go to home, as you can see, the CSS file for the home and then the actual component like that. There's nothing fancy going on here, just CSS and then the couple of HTML tags. And the profile page too, as you can see, I have one folder called profile, and then the CSS file for the profile, and then so I imported the CSS and the picture of the profile page, and I use it inside, where is it, this HTML tag. Alright, and the last point is that when I go to my home, I connected my route, my home page route, to the home component. We just imported this one above here, and I have profile page here as well. So when you head over to the project of our application, when I go to /profile, this is what you see. I'll take you through how the structure of this template looks like, and when you go to home, this is what you will see as it stands compared to the final one. Alright, so what you are going to do in this video is to work on the profile component, and I must tell you that you need to pay attention. If you're able to grab this concept, you can make any project of your own, right? So let's get started. But before we get started, we have to go back to the back end stuff and create an endpoint, and then connect to MongoDB, model, do some stuff, and then you get started. Alright, but before that, I would like to give you the pictorial picture of what you're going to do, right? So here, now we can create a book. So as it stands now, any book that we create, we don't associate the user. to the book the person is creating, right? So even when person A logs in, create a book, we can see all the books here. We don't know who created it or who did that, right? You always see book name and then author like that. So you have to associate the books the person creates. So when person A creates a book, person B cannot see the book, right? Unless you give a privilege that, okay, I want this person A to only see my books, or I only me want to see my books. So when I go to my profile page, I will see only books that I created, but not other people, and we can expose all the books created as that. So let's get started. So first, we need to create an endpoint to do that, right? But before that, we have to talk about an important concept in MongoDB called database relationship, right? How are you going to connect or associate a user to a book that a person is creating? So I will have a series on MongoDB as well, diving into MongoDB database relationship, one-to-one, one-to-many, and other stuff. But until now, if you are new to MongoDB, you can stick along, and if you have experience in MongoDB too, you can also use as a refresher. Alright, so in this case, all what we need is one-to-many relationship, because a user can create many books, and one book belongs to one user, right? When I was learning this concept at the first start, it looks clumsy and confused. So until I keep practicing, knowing how it works, able to grasp all these things, right? So let me show you how it is done. So here, when you head over to, let me close all these folders. Let me close all this one. When you head over to the back end stuff, you go to models. Let me make it large for you to see, right? When you go to models, and we have two, books and user. So you're going to associate these two models, a book and a user, right? So we're going to do one-to-many. So here comes the question. Are we going to associate this one to this or that to that? So let me give you a clue. So the clue is that, how are we going to associate? We can only create a book and associate the user. So it means that anytime we are creating a book, we need to associate the user who is creating the book, right? So inside the book model, we have to do what is called database association, and we have three types or four, right? And the most commonly ones are what? Embedding and by parent referencing. And embedding is not performance efficient because MongoDB has a limit on that, right? So the most performance one is called by parent referencing, and you're going to reference the ID of the user to the book, right? So when you fetch the book, you're not going to see when you fetch the user, you're not going to see the book the person has created, but only reference the ID. And you can make a query to MongoDB by the ID based on the user and get the person's book he created that, right? So when you head over to the book model, here is a whole magic here. As we did this one in the previous video, Mongoose imported and create a schema. So a schema is like a template or a blueprint that describes how your database looks like, the structure. And we have category here, we have author, right? The author of this one of the book, and then title here. And let me remove this one from here for now. And here we need to associate the user to this book that a person is creating it. So we call this one parent referencing. So we're going to reference the user. It means we are connecting the user to this book model. So I will label it as created by. It can be anything. It can be the author or the user, right? And here, the type of this is not going to be a string, or isn't going to be a number or whatever. Mongoose have a special keyword for it called mongoose dot schema dot types dot object ID. Make sure you type it correct, the camel case here as it is. So this will tell Mongoose that this is not an ordinary data types, but rather a way of what? Referencing. So this is the first step. The second step is that we have one property called ref, and ref represents reference. what are we referencing? Which model are you referencing? We are referencing the user model, right? Make sure you type exactly. When you make here as you or whatever, it no work because it's going to look for the model called user. Because in our user model, in our user model, you make it as user. When you head over to the user model here, and when you scroll down, you use what is called user. You pass in this to this model to compile. So here we are referencing as a user, and we have to make it as what required. Perfect, and you say true, because it means that if a user doesn't have login or have an ID, we will throw an error. So with the first step, right? So here, when you fetch a book, you can see the ID of the person who created it, right? So we can try this one in Postman, but let's take around and move on. So next is that now when you fetch a book, we can find the field code created by on the mongoose on the book model. But here comes the question. We want to fetch a user by 8 books. And so far as we have referenced the user on this model, on the user model, it has become what is called a virtual property. Okay, virtual property on this user. So behind the scene, we have a field called book model, a book that we have connected, but is not visible. When you say a virtual property, it's a property that does not persist in database, right? So how are you going to populate that into this? So we are going to do that. So here, the reason why we are doing this is that we want to fetch a user by its book it created, right? So what we are going to do will be a simple syntax here, but it's a little bit confused, so bear with me with that. So here so let me call this one, and let me have a label here called populating books the user created. Alright, so here on the user schema, we have what is called virtual. Okay, so as I said, virtual property are the properties that does not persist in database. So you have to give it a name, books. So these books by behind the scene will be available on this model, right? So it's a virtual, as the name implies. And the second parameter here will be an object. And in here, these are the first step, right? Give it a reference. And what are you referencing? You're referencing back to the book, right? And the next one will be a foreign field. Like, make sure you type it exactly, foreign field. And here the foreign field means that what is the name did you use on this foreign book model, because here it's like it's a foreigner here in this country. Let me say that. So a book is now in this country, and so it's a foreign. So in your foreign country, what name did I use to represent me? And the foreign name I use is called created by. So let me go back to the book model again, and we see the foreign key is what? Created by. If here is you or author, it might be author, right? So here we give that. And the last one is called local field, right? So local field represents, the local means, as the name implies, local means that you are inside in my country, right? In the country of my user schema. So what why to represent me in my country is an ID, right? So it will be underscore ID. Perfect. And the last one you have to do for Mongo to be able to connect is you have to say to JSON virtual to true. So the last thing we are going to do is say that UserSchema.set and to JSON, right? And the last one will be on the virtual, we want to appear on our property, so it to be true. So with this in place, we are finished with our model, connecting the user schema and to the book model. So now a user can create many books. but a book belongs to one user. Perfect. So with this in place, we are going to create a route, okay, a route handler. This video will be a little bit long, but bear with me. We are going to create a route to able to create a book, fetch a user by the book the user has created. So we're going to create a profile route so that the user can able to fetch the book is created. So let's head over to our controller. I'll use this route. So let me close all these tabs here. When you go to route, users route, let me make it a little bit smaller so I can have. As you can see, as it stands, we have register route, login route, update route, and delete route, fetch users route, and there's no profile route. That's speedy, right? So let's get started. So here, let me call this one profile route. Excellent. So here, we need to pay attention with what I'm going to do right now, but I think this is really easy. So here, we're going to say user route dot get, right? It's a get request, and the path should be profile, like that. And because remember, you need to authenticate it before you can access this route, so to be private, so that I'll bring in my auth middleware, and then I will say my async handler. You've done this one a couple of times in the back end stuff, and here I will say request and response, like that, and I'm gonna return my function as that. So here I'll make use of try and catch. I can even try and catch because of async handler here, but let me bring that. So in here, first they're going to find the user by ID, right? And the user by ID is always, so far as we have access to this auth middleware, it means the person has login. So we have the user, and our request as request the user.id. So here you will say const user is equal to, let me await it here, and I will say user dot find by ID. We can use find one or whatever, but because the ID is always unique, it's really good to use that. So request dot user then dot underscore ID, right? Because when you hit this endpoint, let me do that, right? So let me try that one for my postman. Okay, so in here, what is the route name? I've saved it and my prettier have formatted it. So let me go to my server and see the actual endpoint, users/profile, right? So let me head over to postman and try that. So here, let me create one. Where should I add the call? Okay, let me make a new file call here and call this one bookkeeping, right? I'm going to make a call to that. So here, let me create one request here and say profile, like that. Let me save it and let me make it a little bit bigger. It's too big, right? Okay, it's good. So with this profile is localhost. I don't know if I have the actual API / profile. It's 5,000. Let me look at my server. It's 5,000. Perfect. So with this in place, let me send request get, and I'll get a response. Let me provide a header here called authorization, and let me give it a bearer. Maybe as just a dummy token here. Let me cancel the request. Let me try again. Wow, it's too big. Okay. So with this, let me send request again, and I see that not authorized. But let me arrange it well. So when I remove the auth middleware here inside my route here, when I remove the auth middleware here, and let me comment this one, and let me just send something. Response rest or sent. Let me call this one profile. I just want to test my endpoint whether it's working. So with this, without logging in, when I log in, as you can see, profile, perfect. So here, you need to find a way of logging in the user. So here, let me log in here. So let me create one more. Let me duplicate this one and let me call this one login. I want to do everything from Postman, and then let me have this and then change it to login, right? And the login is post request, right? So let me give it as post here and let me send invalid credentials. So let me have my form data here, raw, text, and JSON. So let me give my email here. Let me give the right email will be, I think this is the email I use. And my password will be just 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. So let me log in and see. Now let me see I have my token. Good. So I can grab my token here and make requests to my profile, right? So here bearer, and then let me add the correct token here, paste it, and then let me send profile. So let me protect this route as off. So let me bring in my off middleware here, and here I can send back the user correct.user. I've explained this one a couple of times when I'm doing the back end. So when you log in, you have access to the user under my request object. So let me try. So when I send this, as you can see, I have the user, but I want with the ID. This is what MongoDB need to find the user, right? So here, inside the route here, let me uncomment this. We are going to find the user by ID. So now let me send back the user, which has been found here. When I found thank you for user, let me try again, and you can see I have the user back, right? So on this one, we have a property called books this user has created because of the relationship I did. So here, to be able to get back, we can chain our response with a keyword called populate, okay? And this populate is going to populate the virtual field we created called books, right? In the last function, books like that. So when you send the user, you see a books field on the user. So let me try one more time. Send. As you can see, we have a books property on the user and it's empty. It means that this user have no book created it, because anytime you create a book, because it's not authenticated way, you always use books one. So let me save this endpoint here and let me save this one here. So now we know that our user has been called. So here we are going to make some condition here. We say that if actually there is no user, but we are not sure because you cannot get here, but as a developer you need to make sure you are handling everything correctly. So we have to throw an error and say that here you do not, let me give a double quote that I can use, you don't have any profile yet. Alright, so with this we can, if there's a user, then you're going to send a status code of 201, right? So if you say res.status, I can't even ignore because my what do you call it, my middleware will do that, and then let me say 201 or even 200. Okay, it's okay, and let me send back the user, right? So if there's no user in my catch block, I will say res.status 500, which is system error, and I'm going to throw a new error, and this new error, let me call this one server error like that. Perfect. Now our route is working perfectly, so let me try again one more time, and as you can see we have exactly as that. Okay, so next is that we have to connect. We go back to our front end to make the request, right, to make the request, and then fetch the user by 8 books. So as simple as that. So let's make it simple for you to see what is going on here. But I don't want to make this video to be long. So in the next video, we are going to work on the front end, creating our action, dispatch it, and then connect to our components and see the user's profile. So thanks for watching.